Okay, Cyber, I'm back. Can I get a mic check from you? Let me turn that up so I can hear you better. Okay. So let me ask you, before we can start any debate, we have to come to some kind of agreement on language, on knowledge, and on certain things. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking past each other. Do you agree on that? Okay. We're both speaking English, so we can come to an agreement on that. But one of the things that's been of great concern to me lately is on logic, because I've noticed that Muslim debate opponents, you guys operated under a different system of logic. So I just like to see if we can come to an agreement on logic. Um, I believe that the three laws of logic, that being the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, and the law of excluded middle, are eternal and uncreated. Do you agree with that? Come up to me and tell me if you agree that the laws of logic, that being the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and the law of the excluded middle, are eternal or created. Your mic, sir.
Forgive me, man. I'm not so much in the mood of debate right now. I'm in bed actually. It's 1:40 a.m. here in the UK. I'm in bed. So um, what were you saying? You were saying um, yeah. We need to come to some common kind of logic, some common um, I'm not sure about that. What do you mean by eternal? I'm not sure what you mean. You see, they're not created. Uh, I'm not quite sure.
In another way, do you believe that, for instance, the law of identity, the law of identity says A equals A, it can never equal B or anything else. A thing will always equal itself. Okay? You can't have a cat that's also a dog, a horse, and a rabbit at the same time, in the same way. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? A cat will always be a cat. Okay? So, does the law of identity apply to Allah? Does the law of identity apply to your God? Your mic, sir.
Allah has no resemblance to His creation. That's one point. He has no partners, no son. He has not begotten. He does not beget. Um, that's another point. Um, um, he is unlimited. Allah is unlimited, and the creation is limited. So we have the unlimited creator and the limited creation. Um, this is why I believe.
So then, the law of identity does not apply to Allah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so, well, let me ask you this: you believe that Allah is one, correct? You believe that Allah is one. Is that correct? Can you answer me in text? Okay, yes. Is Allah's oneness like our oneness? Is Allah's oneness like our oneness? I'll give you the mic to answer. Thank you.
I think you can say Allah is uniquely one. I think that's how they say Allah is uniquely one.
One, I'm totally different than Christ away. Um, I'm uniquely one. I'm uniquely one different than say Megan Girl. Okay. Um, I'm uniquely one different from every male, and every male is uniquely one different than me. Okay. We have, unless I have a twin brother, which I don't, but our DNA is different. That's how we can be identified through DNA. I mean, everything is completely different, although there are similarities. Okay. But what I'm asking you is Allah's oneness, you say it's unique. Is Allah's oneness like our oneness? Even though I have a oneness to me, okay? My oneness is, well, anyway. So is Allah's oneness like our oneness? Not that it's unique, because my oneness is unique from other people's oneness, but at the same time, I have a relationship to everybody else in the sense that I am still a human being. So my oneness is not fully unique in that sense. So is Allah's oneness completely and totally unique, where it is not like anything like our oneness? Okay, I hope you understand my question. Your mic.
Well, as I said, Allah has no resemblance to His creation, so He's uniquely one, and um, what can I say? Okay,
Were you done? Were you done? I don't know if you dropped the mic. Okay. Are you still with me, Cyber? Or did you fall asleep? Okay. All right. So Allah's oneness is not like our oneness. The law of identity does not apply to Allah. What about the law of non-contradiction? That being truth will always equal truth, and falsehood will always equal falsehood. Okay? You cannot be true and false at the same time and in the same way. Does the law of non-contradiction apply to Allah? Your mic, sir. So the law of non-contradiction applies to Allah. Well, answer on the mic, dude. Answer on the mic, please.
to be honest, I don't think any of these laws apply to Allah. Allah is free from all of these laws, and Allah is free from His creation. So, um, you want the mic, LA mentality?
To make it simple for him, God is the cause of causes. So we are unlike anything of Allah's oneness.
Well, I, as a Christian, completely disagree with that. I, as a Christian, believe, well, I believe that my God is a logical God. The laws of logic apply to my God because my God is the source of these laws of logic. Okay? The law of non contradiction applies to my God because he is the source of the law of logic, of the law of non contradiction. That's why my God can never be just and unjust through eternity. Okay, that's why my God cannot cease to be God. Law of identity. That's why my God cannot lie. Okay, so if you're saying that these laws of logic do not apply to your God, that means your God can be unjust. Your God can lie. Your God can cease to be God if he so chooses to. Okay? But now here's something interesting though. You said Allah's oneness is not like our oneness. So therefore, to Allah, 1 plus 1 plus 1 could equal 1 or 99 or 1,000,000,099 or 1,000,000,001 or any other number combination that there may or may not be. Because his oneness is not like our oneness. Okay? Do you see the logic, the contradictory illogicalness, if that's a word, when it comes to your God? It's completely nonsensical. Because not only do you not know your God, okay, but your God, well, is not God. If the law, hey Rosen, if the law of identity does not apply to your God, then Allah is not Allah. Allah is something else, but he's not Allah. Do you see the problem here? Anyway, Cyber Sultan, are you there? Excuse me, mentally, whatever. I was having a conversation with Cyber Sultan. If you take a number and get in line, I would be more than happy to address you. But Cyber Sultan, are you there? Oh, you're going to lay down now? Okay. Well, I hope I gave you some things to think about, Cyber Sultan. Okay? Well, okay, you got your hand up. Mentally, can you lower your hand, please, and let Cyber Sultan go because he has to go to bed, and I was having a conversation with him. If not, I will request from the admins to lower your hand. Okay? Admins, can you lower mentally ill's hand, please? Megan girl, are you there? Are there any admins in the room? No, I'll address you in a second. It's very rude of you, sir. When I was having a conversation with Cyber Sultan, it's very rude of you. Okay? Am I an admin in this room? Oh, this is Divine's room. No, I'm not an admin. Okay. Is Divine here? Is Divine here? He left his room? No. All right, then we'll let mentally ill come up and, well, ruin the conversation. Very rude of you, sir. Extremely rude of you to interrupt. I believe you're a Muslim, so you're interrupting another Muslim. Anyway, he wants to go to bed, so that's very rude of you, sir. Anyway, I'm off the mic.
Radical, don't act like you don't know who I am. You know exactly who I am. I think you're just afraid of the fact that I can actually answer your questions in more depth and can be actually sincere in what I have to say versus you trying to pick on somebody in the room because you think by speaking in your euphemisms and your, you know, extracted so-called reasonable conclusions, it's actually far from really getting at what you're trying to get at. So the first thing I'd like to tell you is you claim that your religion and that your God is a logical God and a God based on reason. However, the God that you believe in as a Christian is a triune God. Is that not correct, Mr. Radical Moderate? You believe that Jesus Christ is the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. So you believe he's a 3 in 1. Now, even on a mathematical level, how exactly can 3 become 1? Because even if you look at it on a based on logic, you're saying that Jesus is the one true God. The one true God is the triune God, and that Jesus is not that one true God. And this is how Christians try to claim that their God is somehow logical, when in all reality, if you ever took a course in logic, you understand that by accepting the doctrine on the Trinity in any logical or reasonable sense would be absurd. However, what you rely on as a Christian is what's called faith. So when you accept the triune God, you really accept it based on faith, not on anything based on logic and reason. because we can go into great depth about how the understanding of a triune God, which came decades, maybe about 150, 200 years after the death of Jesus Christ, as doctrine within the Christian church. So when you say that Islam is actually illogical, I think you're mistaken. So you need to do more research exactly about why you claim your God, the triune God, is a God of reason and a God of logic. When in all actuality, how is something 3 in 1? There is one God. You're saying no, it's not 1. Out of 1 there comes 3. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's so reasonable and so logical. Anyways, I'll pass the mic.
Really, I have no idea who you are. So if you went by another Nick, I'm glad I stuck out to you, but you haven't to me. But anyway, so let's examine what you just said. Is there anything like Allah? You said no, there isn't. Allah is completely and totally unique. But you said the doctrine of the Trinity cannot be logical, even though logic does not apply to your God to begin with. So therefore, you have no reference point in that. But now here's where it gets really, really funny for you, okay? Because if there's nothing like God, and there's nothing like God in creation, and there's nothing like, well, let's just use your misrepresentation. We do not believe 3 gods from 1 God. Okay, we do not believe that. Okay, just to let you know. So that was a straw man. But let's even take your misrepresentation and your straw man to heart. Let's, for argument's sake, say yes, that's what Christians believe. Since there is nothing like God, as you readily admit, and there is nothing like God in creation, then what rational reason, what logical reason do you have to deny such a doctrine as 3 gods from 1 God? You don't, because there is nothing like that in creation. So therefore, you have no rational, logical basis to deny such an absurdity. None, zero. If there is nothing like God, if there is nothing like Allah, and the laws of logic do not apply to Allah, that being the law of non-contradiction, that being the law of excluded middle, and that being the law of identity, then certainly, and since Allah's oneness is not like our oneness, then certainly, since there is nothing like Allah in all of creation, then Allah could be 3 in 1, right? Allah could be 99 in 1. So you have no, what do you mean wrong? Why is that wrong? Just saying it's wrong. Well, again, what rational reason what logical reason do you have to deny that? You don't have any. So because there is nothing like a triune being in creation, you say it doesn't make any sense, right? Right, mentally? Okay? So is there anything like a triune being in creation? Raise your hand mentally. You wanted to join in this fight. Now I'm thinking you're wishing you didn't. So mentally, if there is nothing like Allah, and there is nothing like a triune being, or even a being as you mistakenly put it, okay, 3 from 1, or 3 gods from 1, then guess what? You just described Allah as far as you're concerned, because you can't know Allah, because the laws of logic do not apply to your God. So therefore, your God can be 3 in 1, or 99 in 1, or 1,000,000,000 in 1, or whatever in 1, or from 1. Do you see the problem? But explain to me why that can't be so. Rosen, your mic.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of God's chosen people, to Christians, greetings to our respected guests, and to our Muslim friends, my deepest condolences. Okay, let me ask Cyber Sultan, are you here? Cyber Sultan, hey there, Firefly, God bless you, sister. Cyber Sultan, are you here? Calling out Cyber Sultan. Thanks, sis. Cyber Sultan, you are here. Okay, listen, I am willing to yield the mic so that you can finish off your interaction with radical moderate before I address mentality. Would you like to do that? Yeah? Okay. So mentality, please allow me to come up after Cyber Sultan or Radical Moderate if Radical wants to address Cyber Sultan because they had something going on, all right? So before you take the mic, please let me go ahead of you because I want these guys to finish off their discussion. Otherwise, it's not fair to them, okay? So Cyber Sultan, please put up your hand. When I see your hand is up, I'll yield the mic. Okay? You there? Okay. Go ahead. Your mic, sir.
All right, guys, you listening? I'm actually laying down in bed, actually. Yeah. Yeah, Radical Moderate, you made some good points, actually. Interesting points. It's something I have to think about myself. Some of those questions that you asked. So it's good talking to you. I'll have to answer you another time when I've had some good thought over your questions. Yeah, we'll discuss it further. So I'm just in bed at the moment, so I'm laying down and watching the texts. So take care, guys.
Okay, could I get a mic check, please? Mic check. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm a bit of a Johnny-come-lately to the room, but I'm just going to address mentality. Mentality, whoever taught you about Christianity? Huh? Or is this your own personal study? You there, mentality? I want to make sure this guy is here. I believe Allah is closer to me than my jugular vein, although he's not really here because he's so transcendent. He's far above the throne. So it's really double talk. It's not of importance. Okay, so you talked about taking a course in logic, and you said that the doctrine of the Trinity is absurd. You rely upon faith and not logic and reason. Okay. So let me ask you, you talk about faith and reason. Where does reason come from? Where does reason actually come from? And the laws of logic. Mentality. Where do the laws of logic come from? This is so boring. Get to your point. I'm asking you a question. This is a key question. Where do the laws of logic come from? From Allah. Okay. So are you saying that the laws of logic apply to Allah, or do they apply to creation? So they're from Allah. Do they apply to Allah, or do they apply to creation? Nothing applies to Allah. Okay, so the law of identity doesn't apply to Allah. The law of non-contradiction doesn't apply to Allah. And the law of excluded middle doesn't apply to Allah. Now he says it does not. Okay, it does not. So he's confirming what I just said. So Allah can actually contradict himself and lie, correct? Impossible? How's it impossible? You just said that the law of non-contradiction cannot apply to Allah. Now you say that it's impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mr. Mentality, which should actually be mentally retarded, because he just tried to insult radical moderate, for not being logical or rational, and yet he himself just refuted himself and contradicted himself. But I guess you know what you just did, mentality, is you just committed the sin of shirk, because on the one hand you said the law of non-contradiction can't apply to Allah, and you also the law of non-contradiction can't apply to yourself, because you think that your statements are completely reasonable. Okay? So, mentality. What a farce. I agree. What you're saying is a farce, completely a farce. So now tell us, this is my final question to you, could you explain to us how you could say that the laws of logic come from Allah when you can't even know anything about Allah? He is unknowable and incomparable. Go ahead, your mic. Please don't change the subject. Please address the question. Go ahead.
Listen, buddy. Listen, peasant son. God is unique. Nothing is like him. He is neither body, nor individual, nor substance, nor accident. Allah is beyond time. He doesn't dwell in a place or within a being. He's not an object of any creatural attribute. He's not a qualification. He's neither conditioned nor determined. He's neither engendered nor engendering. Do you understand that? He's beyond the perception of all senses. Your eyes can't see him. Observation can't attain him. Imagination cannot comprehend him. He is a thing, but he's not like other things. He is omniscient, all-powerful. He created the world without any pre-established archetype and without any auxiliary. Therefore, when you talk about laws of logic and reason, they do not apply to Allah. Do you understand that, peasant son? Do you understand that? I'm not contradicting myself. You're not listening. See, people like you are already at a conclusion before you listen to what people are stating. That's your problem, is that you have a biasness. You have a biasness, so therefore you come to a conclusion before I even go on to speak. So let me go back to radically moderate. Let me go back to him. Radically moderate. Let's talk about a fallacy about your triune God. Okay? Let's talk about the fallacy of your triune God, because you made the statement that your God is logical. Okay? So do you have any idea what the fallacy of equivocation is, sir? Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever heard of the fallacy of equivocation? It means when you take a word and you mislead somebody because that word has more than one meaning inside of an argument. And that is exactly what the premise of Trinitarianism is based on. So let me explain that to you. Okay? The Bible teaches that there is only one God. Right? That's one statement right there. That's the premise. That's a logical premise. The Bible teaches that there is only one God. The second premise is the Bible teaches that the one God is the triune God. So based on those two logical premises, we can conclude that each of the three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, are that one God. Right? But see, this is the interesting part about you Trinitarians, is that you actually use more than one definition of the word God in your argument. And that's why your doctrine is a farce. Because on one hand, God is a divine nature, but on the second hand, God is also a personal being. But if you really dig deep, you can see you actually even get more definitions of the word quote-unquote God. Because God is also a divine nature. It's also a person who is the father of Jesus. It's also another person who is the Father's Son. And yet it's another person who is the Holy Spirit. And yet another identity who is the triune being. So you can easily see that when we break down the premise of the Trinitarian argument, it is one that commits the fallacy of equivocation, which on one hand it may sound good, quote unquote, right? Sound good. But if you dig deeper, you can see the absurdity behind Trinitarian doctrines. Right? And I can go on. But you know what? I'm going to pass the mic and I'm going to let these PhDs of philosophy and theology come on the mic and disprove that Islam is not a logical or reasonable understanding on the conception of God. Go ahead, you PhDs.
Okay. Wow. Okay, mic check, bro. Apparently this guy, I just learned, apparently this guy is a real debater. I'm not even kidding you. Oh man, it just shows you how, like, if you sound certain of something, you know, people will take you seriously. That's about it. Man. Okay. Okay. Einstein. In the text. Mentality, aka Einstein. You're not a very sharp. You're not the sharpest tool in the shed, are you, Mr. Einstein? You're not the sharpest tool in the shed, are you? You just came up to the mic and said no laws of logic apply to your God, yet you just tried to apply the laws of logic to the Trinity. Are you kidding us? Everyone in the room just saw you do that. Every single person in the room just heard you say, and in the text you said, no laws of logic apply to your God, but yet you just tried to apply the laws of logic to the Trinity. What happened, man? So do the laws of logic apply to God or not? Yes or no? Yes or no? Do the laws of logic apply to your God or not? So, okay, so what you're saying is that our God is not based on logic, and your God is not based on logic, so therefore we worship the same God. Is that right? Is that right, Mr. Mentality? Mr. Einstein? Oh, I see. Your God does not need logic to exist. The epitome of Islamic philosophy. Your God does not need logic to exist. Excellent. Is anyone recording this? He does not need logic to exist, although it is 100% logical. This is even worse. This is, what the hell, man? What the hell? It is 100% logical? It is 100% logical, and your God is not, the logic doesn't apply to your God, and that he doesn't need logic to exist? Dude, you are, I mean, there's no point talking to a person like that. You just contradicted yourself all the time. How is that possible? So it's 100% logical, but yet no logic applies to your God. It's 100% logical, though. 100% logical that no,
Christian seminary,
that no logic applies
right? The
to your
content
God.
will be different. The message
Okay.
will be essentially the same.
Anyway. I mean, I don't want to even attempt to fix all his contradictions, such as, I'll just list a few of them. The idea that God is beyond our comprehension, the idea that God is dissimilar to anything that exists, but then he actually cataloged God as omnipresent and omnipotent. The idea that, well, actually, I'm not actually. Forget it. I'm not going to go through all his contradictions. I mean, he just made there's too many to count. I'm just going to ask you one thing. How does attacking modalism refute the Trinity? That's the only question I have for you. How does attacking modalism refute the Trinity? I mean, you came up here with the most profound certainty in your voice, like the absolute certainty. Oh, yes, I have now refuted the Trinity, and you attacked modalism. And mind you, not only did you attack modalism, but you didn't attack modalism even successfully. And that was the worst part of it all. I mean, I am against modalism. I think modalism is easily refuted, but your rebuttal to modalism wasn't even successful. It wasn't even a good rebuttal. Not only you didn't even have a premise, you didn't have a conclusion. Not only was it not valid, but it wasn't even sound. So, number one, why are you equating Trinitarianism with modalism? Number two, in what way on God's green earth did you even refute modalism? What was your actual argument? All you said is that God cannot be three in one. Well, modalists say God can be three in one, and they can point to examples in the creation that do contain oneness and threeness. Obviously, there's tons of examples. Time, present, past, future. Obviously, water, right? Liquid, gas, hydrogen. There's all kinds of things that exist in the creation as three and one. So when you say, how can one be three? How can three be one? This is not actually a rebuttal of anything. Yeah. So what is your argument against modalism? I mean, I don't even agree with modalism, but yet you don't have an argument. What is your argument? Type it out. Type out the premises. Type out the premises, then type out the conclusion. Go ahead. What's your argument? Exactly. You have nothing. If you actually had an argument, you would have typed it out. You only have a question. How can 3 be 1? How can 99 be 1, sir? How can Allah have a plurality of 99 names and 99 attributes and yet still be one in every single sense, in every single way? Huh? Now, let's see if watch his example where he's going to compare his God to the creation. Because guess what? I'm one human being, right? But yet I have a multiplicity of attributes and I have a multiplicity of names, right? So is your God like me? Is your God is that supposed to be a response pointing to some aspect of creation? Oh, guess what? I just told you what the modalists, they do the exact same thing that you do. They do the same thing. They can point to any example within the creation and they can say, oh, guess what? He exists as one individual and yet he has a multiplicity of attributes, right? Anyone can do that. Anyone can say that. Anyone. A modalist can say the same thing. No, you can't explain that. If you could have explained that, you would have just answered in the text. So, number one, let's go over this, okay? Number one, idiotically, you tried to say that logic, your God is 100% logical, yet logic doesn't apply to him. Okay, that's good. I mean, this is getting far more paradoxical than the incarnation. I mean, I think the incarnation is paradoxical, but this guy just clicked the tip, man. I mean, this guy's ridiculous. Number two, logic doesn't apply to God, but yet you just tried to apply logic to our God. Okay, there's another error. Number three, all the contradictions you made, and now to top it off, you have no argument against modalism, but yet you equated modalism with the Trinity. In fact, you talked a lot about their fallacy of equivocation, a lot about equating, yet you are the only one who have conflated one doctrine with another doctrine. Hey, Christians in the room, is there any Christian in the room? In fact, this is how easy it is to destroy your idiocy. Is there a single Christian in the room? This is for the Christians in the room. Is there a single Christian in the room that believes that Jesus is the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? Or is Jesus Christ the Son? See how it is going to be to expose you? One question with your idiocy destroys you. So next time when you come on a mic, do not embarrass yourself, do not play games, and answer the question. Number one, why did you equate modalism with the Trinitarianism? That's the first question. Number two, how did you even successfully refute modalism? I have heaps of arguments against modalism. You didn't even present a single argument against modalism. You had nothing. Make sure to answer those two questions, rookie.
Can I get a mic check? Um, well, mentality. Are you that guy? Are you that debater? Did you debate David Wood, or are you a guy that I just met in a Shia room when we were bashing the Bakri sect? Because I don't like the Bakri sect. I actually, as it's well known, I actually get along with Shia Muslims. I actually like Shia Muslims better than Bakri sect Muslims, but I still think you're all crazy. But that's beside the point. Well, he's not going to answer. So anyway, so we can move on. We can do a voice comparison later. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, guys. Relation BK men. Obviously, all brilliant points. But here's the funny thing. Even if, as I was saying before, even if we believed in modalism or any other kind of heresy that Muslims like to ascribe to us Christians, he as a Muslim has no reason, has no logical basis to say that that is not God. Because remember, his God is unknowable. His God is nothing like creation. His God's oneness is not like our oneness. So therefore, okay, any attack that he comes up with against whatever he believes to be the doctrine of the Trinity, no matter how wrong it is, he has no logical basis to say that's wrong. Because logic doesn't apply to his God. Because his God is not like creation, and because his God's oneness is not like our oneness. So therefore, it doesn't matter. It's the law of excluded middle. There are multiple options for his God. There's not just true or false. There is multiple options for his God. Well, maybe that's why he has 99 names, huh? Well, actually, Muslims like to say now that he has more than 99 names. Only 99 have just been revealed to us. And surprisingly, Allah's not one of them. That's interesting. But either way, mentality, when you come up to the mic, I want you to give a logical, rational explanation of one, why your God can't be three in one, when your God is not like anything in creation, when your God is unknowable, and when his oneness is not like our oneness. Number two, if your God, if the laws of logic do not apply to your God, then how does your God exist? Because the law of identity doesn't apply. Two, if the law of non-contradiction doesn't apply to your God, can your God lie? Can your God be unjust? Can your God cease to be God? And if the answer is no, then by what reason, by what logical basis can you say that he can't be any of these things? Okay? Because you don't know your God, and the laws of logic don't apply to your God. And finally, number three, the law of the excluded middle. Since that doesn't apply to your God can be many gods. There can be many options to your God. And one of those, he can be many gods. And that's just his unique oneness, which is different than our oneness, because my oneness is I'm one human being. So therefore, his oneness as a deity, as a God, could be many gods. And that's simply all it means. And if that's not the case, then you have to give a logical reason of why that's not the case. Just saying, no, he's above all that. It's not a logical response. Anyway, next on Mike. Yes, your God is 100% logical, but your God is not logical. Sorry. Next on Mike. I think Rosen wanted mentality to go. Next on Mike.
Mentality, it's your mic. Ralston is giving you the mic, so take the mic. Make sure to answer all of the questions that were directed to you from me and Radical Moderate. Don't run. Don't run, Mr. Debater. We know who you are. We know who you've debated. And now we've finally caught up with you. We're very glad you came on Power Talk because we're going to have a field day with you and we're going to post it on YouTube. So get your ass on the mic. We've got some debating to do. Punks like you who punk out in the real world think you're the glorious kings of debates. Now you've met your real match. Come to the mic, sir.
Why do you yell? Calm down. This is only a chat room. It's only pal talk. Control yourself. You're too grown to act like that. So please post in the room. I don't know who Ali Itayi is. I don't know who that is. My name is not Ali Itayi. I know you're afraid by people like me and think you've ran into me before, but you haven't. See, the difference between me and a lot of these people that come into these rooms is that I don't waste my time on here trying to prove my intelligence to you. Instead, I'd rather understand myself first and then understand my relationship to God, which is Allah in my case. And I once become comfortable in both elements, then I can come on here and share my thoughts and what I've learned. But until that, go ahead and post in the room the questions that you would like for me to answer. So please do that.
You know, you're a little snake because when I was on the mic and I told you to answer the question, what did you do? You said, I will speak to it and answer it on the mic. And you come to the mic and you run. I'm done with this snake. Go ahead, Ralston.
All right. According to a few people in the room, it's been suggested that we have a crossfire. So I don't know, Vine, I can let you go up next, and then is it okay if Mentality and I go one-to-one? Is that okay? Vine, so I'll just pass the mic over to you, and then we can just go toe-to-toe, if that's all right. Is that okay, Vine? How many people would like to have a ... Okay, I'll let you take the mic anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you like you asked me if it was okay, so then you can pass me the mic, and I was gonna say, yeah, it's okay. Anyway, yeah, I just want to go into, like, this the Muslim thing with these 99 names, right? So LA mentality, can you hear me? Right. So Muslims say that Allah is defined by Tawheed. Right? Now the problem with that is that the attributes that the Muslims assign to Allah, because I keep hearing people talk about this, but you guys, frankly, you don't articulate it clearly. It doesn't make sense the way you're describing it. The issue is that the attributes are contradictory. They're not the same thing. So the 99 attributes basically don't allow for Tawheed, because if Allah is Rahman, right? He's the compassionate, and he's also the protector, and he's also the merciful, and he's also Al-Malik, the king, and he's all these other things. And all these different things are different things, then they're not one, right? Because they're different things, and so they actually contradict an idea of oneness. So I mean, that's how it's clear that the Tawheed doesn't work, because all these different attributes are different attributes. Anyway, go ahead, do the crossfire if Mentality wants to do it with you. Mike free.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce the crossfire. So here's the deal. Let's make this very quick, very short, and very brief. You guys only get 1 minute each. That's it. And you get 1 minute each for 20 minutes. Sorry, for 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes, mentality can ask Rasen or questions or query Rasen on the Trinity. The next 10 minutes for 1 minute, Rasen will query mentality over Tawheed and Islamic monotheism. Okay, that's how it's going to work. Now, mentality. Let me get this straight. Okay, you're in the real world now. Okay, buddy. This is not a world where you hire out a gym and a bunch of Muslims applause you and go Allahu Akbar when you make an idiotic point. This is the real world. This is what Christians really think of your idiotic argumentation. Rasen is about to show you the truth. All right? We get tired of people who have no idea what they're talking about, pretend to be debaters, pretend to represent us, pretend to think that they've refuted the Trinity, pretend to think that they've represented Islam. I guarantee you, you don't even know what Islam teaches. All right? So let's get started with the first section of the debate. Rasen, come and introduce your opponent, and then let him give you 10 minutes of questions with regard to the Trinity and Tawheed, or whatever he wants to ask you about. Defend Islamic monotheism or attack Christian monotheism, it's up to him. But come and introduce him. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to introduce Mentality, who is a Muslim. He's going to defend Tawheed and somehow present a case against the Trinity. Let me just say from the outset that in this crossfire, I am not stating that Islam is simply less rational than Christianity, but Islam is completely irrational, and in specifically the doctrine of Tawheed. And we're going to see mentality is going to be completely inconsistent. We've already had a taste of this, a foretaste. So I'm going to invite him up to the mic. Mentality. Let's see how well you're able to present a logical case, since you already affirmed that logic doesn't apply to Allah. Please raise your hand and let's go for it. Mic is free.
You think that because you can hire out a gym and have a bunch of Muslims say takbir, that you're some kind of icon? No, you get your ass to the mic. You've got no excuse, Ali. Mentality, aka Einstein, up to the mic now.
You guys are so violent in nature that you've even created a debate based on intelligence and understanding into a WWF match. Look, man, this ain't the Iron Sheik versus Hulk Hogan. We're just trying to have a little debate. Maybe we can get to know each other's religion or faith, and we can come to a better understanding of each other. Okay? We're not at Mayweather versus Pacquiao, where everybody's excited, yelling, and ready to, you know, clap each other's hands so he can jump in and do his you know, his special move from the top ropes. But anyways, let's go on.
Firefly, we're actually having a crossfire between myself and Mentality. So I don't know if you wanted to do some kind of introduction or something, but it's been agreed by the room admin that we're going to have. Okay, you have a question? All right, I'll pass the mic.
Okay, maybe this can come in on the crossfire. Much earlier, before all the blustering started, there was discussion about logic. And it was stated, I believe by Radical Moderate or you, I'm not sure which one, that apparently Muslims don't believe that in the law of logic, okay, is that to be taken to mean, and I'll ask both Mentality and Royalson, is that to be taken to mean that Allah is not logical? That's my question.
Well, I'm going to answer that question first. It must be. If logic doesn't apply to Allah, then he by nature is not logical. Something which is not logical by nature is illogical. Therefore, Allah is an illogical, inconceivable being. That means that he can't possibly exist. So I'll pass the mic over to Mentality. I don't know what he can say in response to that. But guys, this is not a Q&A period. This is actually crossfire between myself and Mentality. So if we could reserve our questions for after the crossfire, that would be great. So Mentality, maybe you could just answer this question as a prelude to our crossfire. Thank you.
Sure, I'd love to. I don't know what a crossfire is. Again, everything is related to you guys in some form of violence. Crossfire, beat up, jump in. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Anyways, let's talk about exactly what I wanted to do. First, let's first bring two passages from the Quran that pretty much sum up why God's existence and why Allah Himself shown himself to be a God of a logical God, but not one that needs logic to exist. See, again, you don't listen clearly. What I said is that God, Allah, my God, is 100% logical, but does not need logic to exist. Although, even within the Quran, he states specifically why his existence has a logical conclusion. And he states, 52:35, or were they created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves? And then says, or did they create the heavens and the earth? Rather, they are not certain. Now I will go into detail, since I have only 1 minute, about why I brought up those passages. I'll pass the mic.
Well, that wasn't a question directed to me, but I will respond to you by saying that if you state that Allah is not a logical God, that Allah is a logical God, but doesn't need logic to exist, then that tells me that there's a part of his nature that doesn't need to exist for he himself to exist. And that is a logical inconsistency and self-refutation. So please tell us how Allah can exist if a part of his nature doesn't need to exist. Is he changing or is he unchanging? Go ahead.
Is it possible that humans were created from nothing and by nothing? Because if that's the question, would this not violate reason? So how can something come from nothing and also nothing comes from something?
Okay, that doesn't answer the question. I'll ask you the question again. And by the way, you're now telling me that Allah's actions are not rational or logical because he creates out of nothing. And yet earlier you said that Allah is rational. But I'll ask the question again. How is it possible for Allah to be logical by nature and yet doesn't need logic, a part of his nature, in order for he himself to exist? How is it that a part of his nature does not need to exist for he himself to exist when he is defined by his nature? Go ahead.
It's the understanding that God alone is the creator of all that exists. That means God is eternal, no beginning, no end. Thus, it makes logical sense that he would be the one who created the universe and all that is in it, including your little minuscule, small little understanding of logic. He's ever-living, self-sufficing, self-sufficient. Traits unique only to Allah.
I'm sorry, but that doesn't make any sense, because you're now saying that he's self-sufficient, but he's obviously not self-sufficient if a part of his nature does not need to exist for he himself to exist. You just said that he doesn't need to be logical in order to exist, yet you're saying that he is logical by nature. So how can he be said to be self-sufficient if a part of his nature doesn't need to exist for he himself to exist? This is the third time I'm asking you this question. Go ahead. And I'm Mr. McKell. Could you please lower your hand? We're having a crossfire. Thank you.
Yeah, this guy's you're starting to run circles around your own argument. So let me ask you a question to answer your question. Did humans create themselves? Does that have any logic? Or would one must already exist in order to create oneself? But in order to be created, one must first not exist, right? Is that correct, Royal Son? I'll pass the mic.
So now you're actually comparing God to his creation and saying how God exists must be also like how we exist. If God is self-sufficient and eternal, that is in contrast to humans, which are created and they depend on God in order to exist. Why are you comparing God's existence to creation? That's irrational. And it still doesn't answer my question. I'm asking you, you said that Allah is a logical God, but doesn't need logic to exist. If Allah is logic by nature, but doesn't need logic as part of his nature in order for him to exist, how can you say that he is self-sufficient? Please tell us how a part of his nature doesn't need to exist for he himself to exist. And don't jump to creation because you're committing shirk by comparing Allah to his creation. Please answer the question. Go ahead.
See, it's interesting because you can't even follow logic, and yet you want to talk about logic. So let's go back to what I said in the beginning. I said, is it possible that humans were created from nothing and by nothing? And I asked, would that not violate reason? Someone in the room typed, absolutely, that would violate reason. How can something come from nothing and also nothing come from something? So then I asked you a question to answer you. Did humans create themselves? And I said, I even answered it in my response to even the question. I said, in order to be created, one must first not exist. So if you follow logic, you'd understand that humans must be created by something already in existence. So in order for that to happen, there must be what's called an infinite regression of causes, which leads a human to not being in existence. To give it to you mathematically, if you have a piece of paper, I can show you. If C1 was created by C2 and C2 by C3 to Cn, then C1 cannot exist unless C2 does. If you've ever taken a course in logic or ever taken what's called the LSAT, which is the assessment test to go into law school, you would understand logic games, right? So going further, if human existence is preceded by infinite amount of causes requiring an infinite amount of time to take place, it is saying that they will never take place. So human existence can then become impossible. Unless there's one possibility, that humans and other created things were created by a being which is itself not created. So with that logical conclusion, we come to the understanding that God alone is the creator of all that exists. Meaning God is eternal, no beginning, no end. Which makes logical sense that he would be the one who created the universe and all that is in it, including your logic. You understand that? That's freaking basic junior college philosophy and logic, and you still don't understand that. It's insane. You're saying I'm not answering the question. I mean, these guys are ridiculous. You guys are absolutely ridiculous. I pass the mic. I have to get angry because it frustrates me when people don't even listen. Like, listen for a second. Come to your own logical conclusion by what I'm saying. But anyways, I'll pass the mic. It's just frustrating how these people don't listen.
Hang on, Ralston. Hang on. Mr. Einstein, this is not the WWE. You're not the Ultimate Warrior. You're not the Undertaker, okay? Don't get angry on the mic, okay? Don't get angry. Just chill out, man. Take a chill pill. Go ahead, Ralston.
The funny thing is that this guy is engaging in doublespeak. So he's saying he's actually avoiding my question. So he didn't actually explain how Allah doesn't need a part of his nature in order for him to exist, and yet he's self-sufficient. That's the first thing. The next thing is that he appeals to the philosophical construct of the infinite regress, showing that for something to exist, right, it either has began out of nothing or it has always existed. But that's presupposing the laws of logic. Now, he just said that Allah created the laws of logic, right, and all that exists in the universe. If Allah created the laws of logic and everything else that exists in the universe, then Allah himself, by definition, is not logical. So how can you say that he is logical but doesn't need logic in order to exist? That doesn't make any sense. Now, with regard to, Big Wow, I think I've asked you the question about 5 or 6 times now, how it's possible for Allah to exist when a part of his nature does not need to exist for he himself to exist, right? Oh, yes, I do. You're presupposing that the law of infinite regress can still apply, but you can't point to a source for that. You can certainly not point to Allah as the source for that, since logic is not a part of his nature if he had to create the laws of logic. If Allah had to create the laws of logic, then you can't say that he himself is a logical being. If you're going to say that he created the laws of logic and then the laws of logic became a part of his being, a part of his nature, then you're telling me that Allah himself is a mutable being. He is a changing being. He is not perfect in and of himself. So you're actually refuting yourself all over the place in your application to creation needing to either begin to exist or always existing, whether it be created or uncreated, whether it has a beginning or no beginning. But you can't do that as a Muslim, because you are now appealing to what happens in creation in order to justify the existence of your God. And you can't do that. So I'm going to ask the question, I think it's maybe the 7th time, I am mentality. Please answer the question. This is a crossfire, okay? How can Allah be logical if he doesn't need logic in order to exist? If he is logical by nature, how is it possible for that logic to not need to exist? How is it possible for his nature to not need to exist in order for he to himself to exist? Don't avoid the question. I'm going to keep pressing you on it. No matter how many smoke screens, no matter how many red herrings you bring up, no matter how many applications to what exists in creation you bring up, no matter any kind of philosophical construct you're going to bring up, I'm going to press this issue on you. How is it possible for Allah himself to exist and yet not need a part of his nature in order to exist? Answer that question.
Oh my God. It's incredible how I have to keep repeating this as if you okay. Okay, it seems maybe you're well enough versed to understand Aristotle, correct? So when we're talking about logic, we could probably say one of the fathers of our understanding of logic, right, is someone like Aristotle, correct? And Aristotle argued that infinite regression of the causes and effect chain was impossible when looking at human existence. Okay? This is what Aristotle argued. However, when you take Aristotle's argument, it leaves only one possibility. That us as human beings were created by a being which itself is not created. I don't understand how much more do I have to say this. God is eternal. There's no beginning and no end. Then that means that that God, my God, would be the one who created the universe and all that is in it. Do you understand that? So that means Allah is able to do all things, and he is above implied attributes that make him no longer God. Do you understand that? Since he's able to do all things, he is above any implied attribute that would make him no longer God. So when you try to come up with these questions and these demands about him, you're only manifesting your own inability to perceive who God really is, and even a logical sense. Let's not even talk about it, whether I'm talking about my God and how I have a theological understanding of it. But more importantly, you don't have an understanding of what God is. So let's go back to answer your question again clearly. There is no beginning or end to God. Do you understand that? That's the answer. There is no beginning or end to God. To answer Royal Sun one more time. There is no beginning or end to God. I pass the mic.
Devil Shark, we're just engaging in a debate at the moment. If you could lower your hand and leave it to the Q&A period of the debate. We're just engaging in a crossfire section at the moment. Thank you. Yeah, mentality, you still haven't answered the question. Basically, you're asserting that a part of Allah's nature does not need to exist in order for he himself to exist. You still haven't explained how this can be. You still haven't explained how this can be. Let me ask you this. No, you haven't. You have not. Let's try another attribute. Since you think logic doesn't need to exist for Allah himself to exist, omniscience is an attribute of Allah. Would you agree with that? Mentality? Omniscience is an attribute of Allah. Would you agree with that? Okay. Yet, if we're going to be consistent, since you say an attribute of God doesn't need to exist for he himself to exist, then I'm going to say, according to your logic, then omniscience doesn't need to exist in order for God to exist. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? You don't agree. Omnipotence doesn't need to exist in order for God himself to exist. Would you agree with that? Eternality doesn't need to exist in order for God to exist. Is that what you think? It's quite irrational, right, mentality? It's quite ridiculous, right? Therefore, don't say that another attribute, i.e. the laws of logic, don't need to exist in order for Allah to exist. If you disagree with me, explain why you make the exception. Mic is free.
Because there is no beginning or end to God. So to come to a logical conclusion about the existence of God, there is no conclusion because God doesn't end. I can't believe I have to keep saying this over and over again. Look, there is no beginning or end to God. So how do we come to a logical conclusion to God if there is no conclusion to God? Do you understand that? I know it's a mystery. I know it's like, ooh, what exactly is he saying? What is mentality talking about? There is no beginning and there is no end to God. So when you're sitting here and asking me if the laws of logic apply, which first of all don't even make sense. There's no laws of logic. If the assumptions or if the conclusions of logic apply to God, but yet God doesn't need logic to exist, what I'm trying to tell you is that logic, quote unquote, is a human attribute, and God doesn't need that for him to exist, because before that ever became into existence like human beings, God was always there. Therefore, God will always be there, and he's always been there. So there's no reason for God to apply to your concepts or our concepts of logic. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, I'll just make the simple point. DK rightly pointed out that you were inconsistent because you said you can't make an argument and therefore come to the conclusion that God exists because he's without beginning, without end, he's eternal. Yet you applied an ayat from the Quran in order to conclude, therefore, God exists. Okay, so that's a contradiction on your point. However, I want to also point out that you're inconsistent because you have made an exception. You said that Allah is logical, so that's a part of his nature, but that doesn't need to exist for he himself to exist. And yet, on the other hand, you did not apply that same reasoning to his other attributes of omniscience, omnipotence, transcendence, eternality, etc., because you said God is eternal. So, you then said that logic is a human attribute. Thank you, congratulations, you just committed the sin of shirk by saying that Allah is logical when logic is a human attribute. You applied it to your Allah. So now, since you said that logic is a human attribute, therefore, you'd have to say that Allah is not logical. Okay? Goes around in circles and doesn't listen. Now, I listen to you perfectly well. Go ahead and refute this. Go ahead.
Oh man, one more time. One more time. I don't know how I gotta keep saying this over and over. Okay, God does not need logic to exist, right? Everything that we know of knowledge, everything we know of the world, everything we know of this universe, right? God is not of that. God is above that. There is no attribute to him in this universe that is of him. You understand? Secondly, when we talk about logic, what I'm trying to make you understand, it's really simple, is that God doesn't have an ending nor has a beginning. So therefore, for us to conclude that God or Allah needs logic to be in existence makes no sense. Because in God's uniqueness, in his oneness, he has always existed and will always exist. Therefore, for us to sit here and say, give me a logical proof on the existence of Allah, I would tell you, sure, I can give you one proof of his existence, but doesn't mean he needs that logical proof to exist, because he's greater than that. He's greater than all things. Even a conclusion based on logic. I know in a metaphysical sense, that may be hard to understand, and we have to go into more discussions about what Aristotle talked about in terms of logic and what Aristotle meant in terms of existence. And we can go on and on about different philosophers, and we can then come back to Islam, and that's going to take a long time, and I don't have 3 hours to sit here and talk to you on Pow Talk about it. But I hope that what I'm trying to tell you makes perfect sense to you. God doesn't need logic to exist, but God is 100% logical. Why? Because he's always been and always will be. I pass the mic.
Yeah, thanks, Ralston. Your mentality, you said, quote, there is no attribute in this universe that is of him. Oneness, therefore, cannot be of Allah because oneness exists in this universe, and neither can uniqueness be of Allah because uniqueness exists in this universe, and existence also exists in this universe. So Allah cannot possess that attribute either. Therefore, Allah doesn't exist. Respond. Go ahead. Your mic.
I thought this was like sniper fire or crossroads. What do you guys call it? Crossfire. We're in crossfire. Well, why did we're a crossfire? Dun, dun, dun. So now it's becoming like tag team time. So what's going on, man? Can we keep it just on crossfire? Do I have to answer him too? How many people do I have to answer in this room? I mean, I don't understand.
Could we please, capitalists, could you please lower your hand? And guys, please resist the temptation to join into the, otherwise it just kind of disrupts things. Anyway, look, mentality. Capitalists, please lower your hand. We're engaged in a debate at the moment. Thank you. Mentality. It's been pointed out, and I'm going to underscore this, that you said there's no attribute, let me quote you, there's no attribute in the universe that is like Allah. Allah has no attribute that is like the universe, completely other. Okay, so the existence, the attribute of existence exists in creation. Creation exists. You agree with that? I agree with that. You exist, I exist. Therefore, Allah doesn't exist. Okay? You said there's absolutely no attribute that's in creation that is in Allah. Which is actually quite funny, because you tried to say that Allah is logical, but logic exists in creation. Therefore, Allah himself cannot be logical, which completely destroys your... okay, there's no attribute in the universe that is of him. Yeah. So now, another point that I'll just quickly make is that if everything, forget logic, he's already contradicted himself on that. Okay, guys, I'm just getting a little bit distracted, sorry. So anyway, mentality. How is it possible for creation to have the attribute of existence and Allah to have the same attribute of existence when you said that there is no such thing? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, please. Well, what was your question? Sometimes I feel like you come on the mic just to repeat what I said. What was your question? Please be concise and direct of your question.
Okay, you said there is no attribute in this universe that is of him. There's only two possible ways to interpret this. Either it means that Allah created no attributes. In other words, creation was not created by Allah. Or there's nothing in the universe that has the same attributes as Allah. But the universe has the attribute of existence. Therefore, Allah cannot have the attribute of existence. If you disagree, please explain how it's possible. Go ahead.
One moment. Sometimes I feel that maybe myself, I'm not the best, orator, or I can't make it simple to you. So I was looking actually for a quote by an Islamic philosopher known as Avicenna, which in the Eastern world we call Ibn Sina, Abu Sina. But Avicenna, I am trying to find something that can basically sum up exactly what I mean, because I feel like it's getting lost in what I'm trying to say. I've answered it over and over. Once again, God doesn't need anything of applied attributes to him. Do you understand that? God doesn't need that. Allah is above all these attributes that you try to make of him in this universe. He does not need that. He has been and always will be. That's why any attribute or anything that exists in the world has already came before. So let me give you a more example of that. God, in one sense, has always existed and always will exist. Therefore, anything that has existed in nature, anything that has existed in the universe, must have come from something that has been created first. And since God has always been there, then everything in the world stems in some way from God. But God doesn't need anything in the world for him to exist. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So I'm trying, let me find this quote and I'll come back on the mic. And this quote will sum up exactly what I'm saying. Maybe it will make more sense to you because I guess I'm not articulating it in the best way.
No, actually, I think you're an amazing orator. You're just a hopeless debater because you contradict yourself all the time. I think you'd be an amazing public speaker, but people would just pick out that you contradict yourself. So you say that God in one sense has always existed. Now, you define God as being logical. So you attribute the quote-unquote human attribute of logic to Allah. That somehow that has always existed, right? But he doesn't need that to exist. Then you still didn't answer the question, which is, now DK's pointed out in a syllogism here, there is no attribute in this universe that is of Allah. Premise 2, some attributes in this universe are uniqueness, existence, and singularity. Conclusion, therefore, Allah does not have any of these attributes. So Allah cannot be said to be unique. Allah cannot be said to even exist or to be one. Okay, since these attributes exist in the universe, you cannot apply these attributes to Allah. Tell us how on earth you can claim that Allah exists when creation exists and none of those attributes can be applied to Allah. Go ahead.
Once again, uniqueness, existence, and singularity are something that have come into existence in this universe. Correct? These attributes in this universe have came into an existence, uniqueness, existence, and singularity. So the only way these things can come into being is that something has to have been created before it has. See, exactly. Existence has not always been. See, that's where we disagree. Existence has not only always been, only God has always been. Not existence, only God.
Therefore, Allah doesn't exist. Game over. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, this guy's okay, yeah. So you prove that God didn't exist by me telling you nothing in this attribute of this universe can come into existence before something created it. Just like I told you in the beginning, it's like I got to go all the way back to what I first told you. How can nothingness come from nothingness? There must be something that gave us nothingness, but something must have been not there for it to then come into existence. So there has to be something of nothing. It's the most basic premise of philosophy and logic. But yet I'm trying to tell you that God always existed and always will exist. Therefore, anything that is attributed in this universe, right, is nothing more than something that has came about. But God never did come about. God has always been there. Right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. And now you're going to come back on the mic and you're going to repeat what I said and keep saying it. No, what do you mean it's irrelevant? Now he's saying it's a genetic fallacy. Wow, a genetic fallacy. Who are you guys? Who are you guys, man? It's funny how you're both from Australia, too. That's really interesting. But anyways, come back on the mic and repeat what I said and ask the same question 50 times over. Go ahead.
Yeah, even if we take existence out of the equation, just leave that aside, because obviously that's self-refuting. He does believe that there was nothing, and then there was something, and therefore Allah came into existence. That is, unless he believes either existence is temporal or it's created. Sorry, it's either temporal and created, or it's eternal and uncreated. So you just put yourself in everyone saw that in the room. You just outright destroyed yourself on that point. So there's no point, there's no reason to repeat that. So the question then comes back to down to attributes in this universe that is of Allah. You said there are no attributes in this universe that is of Allah. Now, here's the problem. We're not discussing whether there's anything in this universe that comes from Allah. Do you see the distinction? Your claim on the mic. See, the first time you made the claim, you said there's no attribute in this universe that is of Allah. Then you came up on the mic, and then you said there is no attribute that is from Allah. We're not discussing whether these attributes are from Allah. We're discussing whether there's any of Allah's attributes that exist in the universe. That's what we're discussing. So you tried to make a smokescreen to your own statement. Now, if your statement is true, that none of Allah's attributes exist in this universe, then it's very clear. That means, according to the rest of the syllogism I pointed out to you, that means some of the attributes that exist in this universe are uniqueness, existence, and singularity. But Allah, nothing in this universe, has an attribute that is of Allah. Therefore, Allah does not have any of those attributes. He does not have uniqueness. He does not have singularity. And he doesn't have existence, because they're all attributes that exist in the creation. Simply stating premise one is like discussing the origins of premise one is irrelevant, because the origins of premise one is completely irrelevant to the question. Whether something is created, whether something is eternal, that's completely irrelevant. The point is, you've already acknowledged that there's nothing in this universe that is of Allah. If you, however, change your mind and say that there is something in this universe that is of Allah and that it comes from Allah, then you refuted your own original statement on the mic. So I don't know. It's up to you. It's up to you which one is true. He did not say that Allah came into it. Yeah, if Allah created existence, you would have to exist in order to create existence. So it is self-refuting. LC11, that was a waste of sentence space in the text. By the way, just to let you guys know, obviously the crossfire is over. Now it's an open chat. So mentality, do you mind answering the actual question? Like, okay, so let's just ask you very clearly. I just want to ask a yes or no question. You either agree with the statement you said on the mic, or you don't agree with the statement you said on the mic. Do you agree with this statement? There is no attribute in this universe that is of Allah. Do you agree with that statement or not? Do you agree with your own statement? If you agree with your own statement, then all of the premises and the conclusion that I argued logically and necessarily follow. If you don't agree with your own statement, then you refuted your own statement. So that's it. It's that simple. Go ahead, Ralston.
Okay, it seems that LC111 and mentality just don't get it. Mentality says that Allah had to create existence. But if Allah created existence, he would have to exist in the first place in order to create the attribute of existence. But that's a logical impossibility if he had to create existence before the existence would exist. And he says, no, 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 no. Of course, God exists. The attribute of existence exists eternally. Because otherwise he would have to say that there was a time when Allah didn't exist. But he's saying, no, Allah does exist. But if Allah had to create existence, there must have been a time when he didn't exist. And he would be created or come into being, have a beginning, just like creation. Except maybe his Allah did come out of nothing. Go ahead.
As I stated earlier, I gave you a surah from the Quran that says, were they created by nothing, or were they themselves the creators? Allah has given you that, and it has given you clear, sound logic. So if you look at it, it is known by necessity that every effect has a cause. And we went through that whole thing for 20 minutes to explain that to you, right? So in that verse, the possibilities that are mentioned are actually restricted. And if you see, Allah mentioned them in a negative form. to assert that this is known by necessity and cannot be denied. He said, were they created by nothing, meaning without a creator, or they created themselves? Both these matters are false. Thus, listen closely. It is established that there exists a creator who created them, and he is Allah. There is no creator other than him. And Allah says in the Quran, this is the creation of Allah. So show me that which those whom you worship besides him have created. Look, that is clear logic. It is sound logic, but you're doing everything that you can to negate it when you're not following the clear chain and establishing the clear proof that can satisfy even the most smallest of intellect. Do you understand that?
Oh, were you done, LA? I guess he was done. Yeah, I think what bears looking at is, like what Muslims often say, that there's nothing like Allah, right? And this is why they object to the idea that that Allah is a man and all this stuff, right? And then Muslims also say, well, Allah is one, but the concept one is, the result of that there's ones outside of Allah, right? So it's like, I can only understand one by comparing Allah to things that I know are one. Well, LA mentality, do you believe in the attributes of Allah? Al-Wadud, right, the protector, Al-Rahman, the compassionate, all that stuff, you believe in that? Because that means that Allah is not one if he has all those attributes. Well, you get why that means Allah is not one, right? Because all those attributes are different. Well, think about it. You hear me? Mercy is different from being a protector, is different from being Al-Malik, the king, which means that they're not one, right? Being a king is not the same as being merciful, which means that these things exist independently of each other by necessity, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't make any sense. They'd be incoherent, which means that Allah is not one in a pure sense. That's simple. The attributes of Allah is not to say Allah is not one. Well, are the attributes of Allah temporal or are they eternal? Do you believe Allah changes over time? Because if Allah is eternal, then he's eternal. If Allah's attributes are eternal, then he's eternally a bunch of different things, right? So it's not like that he's acquired titles or things like that. Do you believe Allah has acquired like the attribute of mercy, or has he always been merciful? Has he always been these different things? See, if he's always been these different things, then he's never been purely one, and he's never been a single unit, right? All these attributes would make him inherently divided, right? Well, his attributes are partners, right? They're not persons, but they're still separate, distinct qualities that are incompatible with the concept of pure oneness. You understand? So that's out the window. This whole thing of Allah being purely one. Yeah, that's just out the window. And then you talked about I don't know, like everything has a cause and effect, and I don't really see what you're saying in terms of that. But anyway, I'll let DK Man go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Mentality. We were not on the topic that you created earlier and put your mouth